Okay, so the world's a bit messed up right now. And it's always been a bit messed up. You know, the Victorian era wasn't great. Neanderthals had it a bit rough. But unlike those times, we sort of know why it's messed up and what we can sort of do to help that. And yet it's still very much messed up. And that's frustrating and it makes you want to rant. And so that's sort of what I'm going to do. And that's sort of what this is about. But not in like a proper like aggressive preachy way, but sort of like more conversational. You know, there's lots of things I want to discuss and talk about. And this is the platform I'm going to do it on. And I hope it's very like open-minded and productive ultimately, because the last thing we need these days is more polarization, more divisiveness. So yeah, that's the plan. I'm going to start very broad, and then maybe down the line, I'll get into more niche ideas and like specific, maybe political arguments, philosophical arguments. But I've wanted to do this for a while, so I'm glad I'm finally doing it. And yeah, we'll see where this goes. Okay, so I thought it would be best to start really broad. Like, I mean that. This is a sort of thing I've been thinking about for a long time. And I thought, well, if I lay my core, most fundamental values out, then anything I talk about, any like specific contextual debates or topics I discuss, there's context to why I have that point of view, and hopefully the same end goal in all of the decisions I personally make and like advocate for. So I wanted to go through that with you. I want to sort of caveat this before I start with saying, obviously, my most fundamental values and core principles, I suppose, they're not standard objective rules for life. You know, everyone's got different ones. These are just mine. I do feel like most people can agree on them. They're very broad, so that should help. But yeah, I just wanted to say, like, obviously this is for me. I hope it can be relatable, but yeah, I just wanted to caveat that. So yeah, I've been thinking about this sort of thing for a while. What are my most foundational values for which I can sort of set the baseline for my life and the decisions I make? And I sort of arrived at them by, I mean, this is a bit of a philosophical, well-known sort of question, and I don't know, paradox is the right word sort of thing. But if you ask enough why questions, so if you start with like, oh, why did you have breakfast this morning? Well, because I was hungry. But, you know, why do you care about eating? Well, because it's for survival. Why do you care about survival? That sort of thing, that sort of idea. You get back to like the end point, which is a very hard question to answer. And it sort of looks something like, it sounds really stupid, but like, why do you care about being happy? Or like, why do you care about helping other people? And depending on your worldview and maybe religion and the way you've been brought up, like that could change that answer. But for me, I never really had an answer to that question. At one point it was like, well, because God said so. And a lot of people have their variations of that, but that's not where I'm at the minute. And so, you know, when I ultimately ask myself, I call it the ultimate why. I don't really know if that's a thing that's going to catch or whether that's already an argument or a thing, but that's sort of what I call it, like the ultimate why. What is the last reason for doing anything, really? So yeah, I'm waffling a bit, but like I said, I don't really have that answer, at least not now. So then it's sort of like, well, why do I even have a value system? Why do I even have foundational principles that I live my life by? Well, it's very recent because I've struggled with, you know, not having those things and sort of nihilism and all the stuff that comes with that. It didn't work for me. So, and despite that, despite getting to the point where I didn't think there was really an objective, you know, meaning, purpose, I still had emotions and I still felt a tendency to act in a certain way. And I suppose be a good person, to put it really, you know, openly. So I'm without a proper moral reason for acting good or nicely, but I still feel the urge to do so. So those are a bit confusing to navigate. But when I unpicked sort of the emotions I felt towards doing something good and doing something bad, I arrived at three key principles that I could always fall back to know that I was doing things in the right direction. So yeah, like I said, my first foundational value that sort of evolved as I thought about it more was, these are really obvious. They sound stupid to say out loud, but I think we've got to go back to the basics these days because we're getting it so wrong. So yeah, number one, minimize suffering. And I mean that for all things, all creatures. I'm a biologist at heart. So like I apply that to animals just as much as I do humans. So yeah, that's the first one, minimize suffering. How simple is that? And yet we seem to be getting it so wrong in this day and age. Number 2, which sort of ties really well into number 1, is sort of the opposite. We need to maximize flourishing. And I think these are 2 terms, suffering, flourishing, which are often used in philosophy by, I guess, experts, again, which I'm not. So it's opposite. We need to minimize suffering and we need to maximize flourishing to the best of our ability. And again, people will have different opinions about how we go about maximizing flourishing, but hopefully we can all agree that should be our end goal. That we live in a world where we have minimized suffering to the absolute max, let's say, and maximized flourishing to the absolute max. Now, maximized flourishing is sort of a bit more complicated than the suffering point because we all know what suffering looks like. We all know what to minimize there. But flourishing encompasses lots of different things. So it's a bit more complicated. And I think I'll do another video sort of explaining the different tiers of like flourishment, if that's a word. But like, for example, love, I would class that as a version of flourishing. Having good health, having enough money, it's sort of quality of life, standard of living, all that sort of stuff. But they can be as basic as health and as like niche as, I don't know, what's a really niche example of flourishing? Freedom to travel, stuff like that, like comfort, basically. That's not, and I hope you can realize there's like tiers to that. Obviously, like having basic health is much more important than, well, I think much more important than having like comfort and luxuries, but they all come under the umbrella term of flourishing, which is value number 2. So far we got value number 1, minimize suffering, nice and easy. Value number 2, maximize flourishing. So we're getting somewhere. And then there's actually just one more, really. And again, this is me trying to simplify it as much as possible. Just again, because I think we need to simplify it as much as possible in order to actually have practical steps to move forward. Everyone could create their own foundational values, but these are the 3 that I've stuck with. So number 3 is the preservation of the possibility for future flourishing. Now, originally I had that as like sustaining flourishing, but you don't want to just sustain what you currently have. You want to make sure there's always the opportunity for it to get better, if that makes sense. I don't know, ChatGPT said it much better than me. Maybe I should go back to what they said about that. Maybe I will actually. So I originally said like sustain all life for as long as possible, but it came back and said, actually, maybe what you mean is to preserve the possibility for future flourishing so that we're not just, sustaining life as it is, because that could be a really cruel world. You know, if we were to sustain our life right now, that wouldn't be very good because there are a lot of people suffering and not having maximized lives. But it's about, to put it in their words, ensuring future generations have the opportunity to thrive. So that's number 3. So to put it all together, really basically and simply, number 1, minimize suffering. Number 2, maximize flourishing and all the versions of flourishing. And then number 3, to preserve the possibility of future flourishing to the best of our abilities. Nothing's perfect, it will never be, but we can do it to the best of our abilities. I basically just want that to act as my justification for any future topics we talk about. I will always go back to why I've decided to make a decision, why I've decided to have a certain point of view, and it will always point to these 3 things. I'm doing it to either minimize suffering, maximize flourishing, or preserve the opportunity for flourishment for future generations. I'm really interested to see if anyone has any other opinions on that, whether they disagree, maybe they add another foundational value, whether they just disagree with my ones. I don't know if anyone will watch these, but I really hope so. And I really hope that there can be a conversation about, what people think about that. But the whole goal is, the world is a bit messed up right now. I think we need to go back to the basics. I'm not a philosopher. I'm not particularly intelligent. I'm just sort of representing the normal people with a bit of common sense, which I think is lacking in a lot of leaders and important people, rich people. I'm not going to say names because I don't want to have billions of pounds spent ruining my life. And let's go back to the basics. These are my 3 basics. But I'm really excited to talk about, now that I've set the baseline, I'm really excited to talk about like more niche things. But I hope that's, I don't really know. I don't really know what I want people to take away from that, but I hope people agree that we need to do these things. Like I said, I've started broad so that I can at least get some people on my side. Because we're going to disagree about stuff, but hopefully we can all agree on that. So take care if you're watching this, and good luck minimizing suffering and maximizing flourishing. Wow. All right. See you later. Bye.